Hello everyone, welcome to another artwork analysis. Now, last week I talked about Kazuo Oga and his style of backgrounds for animation or when it comes to Studio Ghibli productions. Now, on the same theme, I figured I want to look into another background artist with a different style, but still have the same fundamentals, and that's Kevin Dart. Now, Kevin Dart has worked on a lot of American cartoons. One notable one that I loved his work in is creating sort of the style template for Powerpuff Girls, the original ones, obviously. I really didn't like the remake, but that's for another story for another time. But I'm going to talk about similar ideas. So temperature shift, similar with Kazuo Oga, Kevin Dart is masterful in creating a naturalistic sense of temperature shifting. Number two, I want to talk about color unity and how he uses different sort of unified palettes in order to create a sense of harmony within the scene and make a logical lighting situation. And then I want to talk about something he commonly uses, and that's the use of verticals and horizontals depending on what he requires. Now, these I would assume are not animation backgrounds, these are illustrations. I might be wrong though, but trust me, he did work on a lot of productions when it comes to creating the looks, so I assume these are pretty relevant when it comes to animation. So, first of all, I want to talk about temperature shifting. So, similar with Kazuo Oga, Kevin Dart is very good at creating the sense of planes. And again, to refresh, when we have two different planes very clearly, they have to, by logic, in most cases, be affected by different lighting, so they will have at least a temperature shift of some kind. Now, there's cast shadows here and there, but you can assume number one is again affected by the sky, but number two is affected by the warm lighting of the sunset sun. You can see it over here as well, where again number two is affected by the sun. Number one is, of course, a cast shadow from what is implied to be buildings from the foreground. And again, he's using these shadows as a means of saving the composition while making sure it's logical. And that's, again, something pretty difficult to really balance, to balance mood and atmosphere with something that you can logically explain within the composition. Now, I don't want to talk about it too much, but again, note what lighting is affecting your scene, and make sure that when you have stark temperature, when you have stark plane differences, you have to have a sense of temperature shifting in order to differentiate them, if that makes sense. These two are facing off in different directions, so make sure of that. Gives it a nice flair of realism, especially if you do it in a subtle way. Now, let's talk about color unity. Now, I did promise to talk about two pieces, but you can see that Kevin Dart in both of these images have a sense that while there are stark differences when it comes to color at times, like for example the door here, you can see that everything else is unified within harmony. And what I mean by this is, it seems like it's affected by the same lighting. And that's where color unity is. No matter what you're doing, even if a scene is very starkly contrasted by the lighting situation, you want to have something that kind of encompasses the entire thing to make sure that it doesn't look like separate images. And Kevin Dart is very good at this. So right off the bat, what color do you think this particular image is affected by? And the answer is all of these are very yellow. There's probably a yellow ochre or a very desaturated orange of some kind affecting every single color of this background. Now, monitors might be different, so you might see a bit of shift in terms of what it looks like, but on my screen, there is definitely a warm overlay on everything to unify it, and there might be, again, a bit of deviation. So this red here, you could say is very strong compared to the rest of the piece, but everything else is muted by this yellow. Similarly here, yes, there are deviations of the red, mostly because he's using red in both of these cases to catch attention or to create a focal point. But in general, you could assume that there is a natural sense of, so even when we have the sunlight lit areas here, they're very muted yellows. They're not these saturated yellows, meaning what is affecting the entire piece is most likely the temperature and colors are most likely adjusted to fit this blue. So it's kind of self-explanatory, but a lot of people do not really consider that. It's sort of like people think about the lighting, people think about, oh, maybe too much into trying to make a logical situation without looking into the fact that we are creating artwork. We have to unify it so that in a particular artwork there is a sense of unity, there's a sense of harmony, and to really just paint out of logic or to paint out of observation, a lot of cases you're going to create a scene that is realistic, but it's not good artwork. Don't see it as some. I know I always promote the idea of realistic painting fundamentals, but you know what I mean. You do not want to just do realism for the sake of realism. You have to do it with a sense of artistic appeal, and everyone has their own sense of what that is. But Kevin Dart's very nice color palettes in all of his backgrounds. I loved his work on Powerpuff Girls, and it kind of shows in his illustrations here as well. So again, make sure that while, yes, colors are affected by different lighting at times, make sure that it, in the end, it still is a good piece of harmonious artwork. The last note I want to talk about is verticals and horizontals. Now, this is more subtle, but I love the use of his shape language, and there's a lot of things going on. It would take me a long video in order to talk about everything. But a good introduction is really Kevin Dart's sense of using horizontals and verticals. So I chose these two images because they are predominantly affected by one or the other, and it kind of gives you a sense that he does do that, especially when he kind of breaks perspective at times. So for example, this fence here is really kind of weird. It's like a perfect rectangle when, again, he could have really put these into perspective. And of course you can see that this road here as well is kind of wonky, but at the same time it works because for his style, he doesn't need to be perfect technical type of perspective. He just has to do some stuff that is kind of, there's an artistic appeal to the way he makes things wonky. Especially, again, these are for cartoons, so he has a bit of leeway when it comes to that. Won't go about it too far, but again, just note that a lot of things are kind of affected by the horizontal appeal of this piece, and a lot of cases it comes down to mood as well. So he probably wanted a very, very calm scene, and the sunset lighting is probably part of it too. The muted sense of lighting. He could have made a sunset that would be really stark oranges and stuff. You might see that in a lot of other cartoons, but in this case, he wanted to give a very calm atmosphere. And horizontals definitely help with that. Now, on the opposite end, let's talk about this one. This is a very vertical base, especially when this is selling the idea that apparently this character is super tall. Might break a bit of perspective. I'll have to really double check on that. But anyways, it really doesn't matter. His style again works with a little bit of wonky perspective going on. Wouldn't hurt it. So, especially when you're painting cities here, a lot of things can look really nice if you just have vertical lines going here all the time. It's beautiful. And you're trying to sell sort of like how tall these skyscrapers are, and cities tend to give that feeling of overwhelming verticality. And again, especially when you're doing shape-based styles, very line artish, you have to take note of what those lines are creating in your piece. Again, that's not to say you have to make everything verticals. So there are things here with Kevin Dart to balance off the verticality with a lot of horizontals going on, and there's perspective here as well. I'm kind of making it wonky a little bit. But in general, our first feeling when looking at this illustration is the verticality of it. And this is most likely deliberate. Maybe he does it subconsciously. I would assume so of a person of his mastery. But just keep that in mind when it comes to your work. Know what movements you are creating, especially if you are doing a simplified animation type of style. It'll help you a long way when it comes to selling your atmosphere and mood in your work. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.